buenos días o buenas tardes, ¿no? Pero aquí estamos casi al final de lección 3 y querría darles una explicación un poco sobre la cultura que encontramos. Okay, so what I'd like to do in this presentation is I'm basically going to go over the cultural section, the panorama section actually. The cultural section was over last names, but I'm going to go over the panorama section because this was a huge problem in the last exam. And since we don't have a lot of time in class for Lección 3, I just want to go over some of the main points to hit. Okay, because remember, there's always the cultura/panorama section. Okay, so let's get started. ¿Cuál es el país de lección 3 y dónde está? Okay, so hopefully you've all watched the panorama. Y Ecuador es el país. Ecuador is a small country on the western coast of South America. And it is located right there. ¿Cuál es la capital de Ecuador? La capital es Quito. Quito es la capital. Some of the things that the panorama went over are things that this is something I normally would have done in class, but here are some videos. I will post the PowerPoint up along with the video that I'm making, but here are some videos that cover the 4 main topics, which are Las Islas Galápagos, Osvaldo Gayasamín, el trekking, also known as senderismo, and Latitud Cero. Okay, so those are some websites to view to gain some more information. But touching on each one, Las Islas Galápagos, although they are quite a bit away, quite a few hundred miles away from the coast of Ecuador, they actually pertain to Ecuador, belong to Ecuador. They are also the home, many people know them as being the home of the giant tortoises that you can see crossing the street, walking around, that are free to move around. But also there are a great many other species of animals that are very unique to that area. In fact, that was where Charles Darwin studied many of those species of animals, which helped him to develop his theory of evolution. Okay. The Las Islas Galápagos are made up of many different islands, some of them obviously larger than others where you can visit, and some are quite small. Osvaldo Gayasamín, he was not only just a sculptor but also a muralist. His artwork, he's one of the more famous Latin American artists. His focus was on the injustice and the poverty that was suffered by the indigenous people of his country, and his primary style of painting was Cubism. El trekking, which is known as extreme hiking, because it pertains to the Andes Mountains, pass through Ecuador, and they divide them into various regions containing volcanoes, huge valleys, areas with various plants and animals, which makes it perfect for those who like this extreme kind of hiking or trekking or scaling mountains. And so that is one reason why it attracts many tourists. Latitud Cero, Ecuador. Okay, the equator line passes right through Ecuador, dividing the northern and the southern hemisphere. And it actually passes through about approximately 14 miles outside of the capital of Quito. And that's where you're going to find Latitud Cero, where a monument called La Mitad del Mundo is located. That's where the equatorial line passes through. So you can literally stand with 1 foot in the northern hemisphere and 1 foot in the southern hemisphere. Okay. So that's some main points of that panorama of some information about Ecuador in general. Okay. You want to make sure that you study that, as there will be a Cultura Panorama section on the exam. Now, the next slides, which I'm not going to go through, will give you some practice. Well, maybe I'll go through the next two. That will give you some practice with various parts of this lesson. Okay, so we have two photos. We have foto A and foto B. And la familia de Miguel. Nombren las diferencias entre las dos fotos. So we have two pictures. We have the same names and people, but there are some differences of these people between the two different drawings. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to write out some of the differences that you see. There should be at least 5 main differences between the people in photo A and the people in photo B. So go ahead and pause the video and write out some of those differences. In just a moment, we'll go through some of those differences plus a couple other things. Okay, I'm not going to wait. I'm hoping that you had paused the video to write out what some of those differences are. And because the pictures will not be on the next slide. Now, the best way to do this as well, if you're doing it outside of the video, is to make sure you put the PowerPoint in presentational form. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. La familia de Miguel. So one thing that was noticed was that in foto A, Ricardo es alto, pero en foto B, él es bajo. Okay. En foto A, Susana es rubia, pero es morena en B, en foto B. En foto A, Agustín es simpático, pero antipático en B. En foto A, Miguel es, podemos decir que es inteligente o trabajador. I don't necessarily like to associate grades with intelligence, because some of the more intelligent people that I know never did very well in school. So maybe to get that grade, we could say he's a trabajador. Pero en B, él es tonto o perezoso. En foto A, Miguel es delgado, pero es gordo, o podemos decir gordito, en foto B. En foto A, la abuela es Rosario, pero es Margarita en B. Y Rosario es vieja, pero Margarita es más joven. Y no hay una diferencia entre fotos A y B con las gemelas Betty y Letty. Ellas son iguales en las dos fotos. Okay, so my recommendation to you, I'm not going to go through all of this in the video, but I have different slides that are good on review of vocabulary and grammar. So I recommend that you go to the PowerPoint and that you put it in the presentational mode. That way you don't see all the answers all at once and you can double check your responses. So I hope this review of the Cultura and review of the overall vocabulary and grammar will help you. Okay, gracias y adiós.